Светлана Григорьевна Тер-Минасова is the president of the Department of Foreign Languages at the Moscow State University. She is our dearest friend here at school, and I think one day you can say that you met the pillars of this society, the people who made this country and who created intellectuals in this country. This is Sветlana Григорьевна, please. And she's going to talk to you about this day of European languages, because we all speak European languages here. Some of us can speak maybe Asian languages, African languages, but the majority here speak European languages. And I hope you would enjoy every minute of it. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon. You know what? I know too much. And I don't know what to begin with. If you have any preferences, because I could, the most interesting, I think, talk could be if I told you my life, about my life, because I feel more and more historic every day. Why? My generation, my whole generation is historic. You know, not historical, historic. That's much more important. Because the first half of my life, my first 50 years, I lived in the Soviet Union. So I'm a product, a witness, and a participant of this huge historic experiment. Revolutions happened in all countries, in all ages. But a revolution that lasted for 70-odd years, that's unique. That's only in Russia. You know, Russia, мне особенно стать, as teacher said, you know, умом Россию не понять. You know, for every line of this poem, I wrote an article. I have an article called умом Россию не понять, аршин, в общем, не измерить, умея особенно стать, в России можно только верить. And honestly, I have an article in English on every line of this immortal poem. So now I'm torn, sort of. So first I thought I would tell you about my life, because, as I said, I feel more and more historic, because when we die out, my generation dies out, then nobody will know exactly how it was in the Soviet Union, what sort of education we had, what we were taught, what we did, and so on and so forth. So and interestingly, as I said, if I could tell you, next time when you invite me, let the subject be my life. No, it's all right, it's all right. I'm used to standing. And also I see better all the faces. You see all those people who are here. Not all, but some, most, say. So as I said, I'm torn now, but first I meant to tell you that you have chosen a very good profession, because studying languages is, I didn't want to study language. When I entered the philological faculty at Moscow State University many years ago, I've been learning English for 65 years of my life. I've been teaching English for 60 years of my life. So I began to teach it when probably your parents were not born. That's how old I am. But, you know, I love what I'm doing. I love the object of my studies. I love the people who share my love and came to the university, to the philological faculty, to the faculty of foreign languages and area studies. Yes, area studies is there. That's the one I opened myself in 1988. I actually managed to do very many interesting things, but only when the choice was either to commit suicide or to think of something new. And you can see I never committed suicide. See, here I am, alive, interested in life, in you, and sharing my interest and my love. I even, well, actually at the moment it's just sort of flood of speech, you know, it's not what I have prepared. But I'm excited, I'm inspired by you, and I think I'm sort of old enough to do what I like. Because, you know, I'm going to write an ode to the old age. Because there is an idea that the old age is just something very bad. Because you can't do this, you're not allowed to do that. And when you are young, you have so many choices and you are allowed to do whatever you like. Every age has its own pros and contras, you know. And as for my age, which is the old age, all right, but I'm working. I go to work or teach online. What is good about my age is that it's the age of freedom. I feel free. All the previous time, I had to do something. What my parents told me, what my government told me, what my bosses told me, and so on. Now I'm free. I can do what I like. And that's a very good thing, you know? So if you lived through your life sort of in the correct way, then you are rewarded at the end. You become free. And you can do what you like and say what you like. Well, sorry, it's sort of flood of consciousness, but just it shows how excited I am and how happy I am. But I meant to, next time, invite me to speak about my life. Okay? Because all my life I've been studying English, and most of it I was teaching English too. I've been teaching. I have been teaching English now. They said 65 years of learning and 60 years of teaching, and still I can't say that my knowledge of the language is perfect. Though actually I spoke to the Queen, to Queen Elizabeth II, and to very many people, interesting people in Great Britain and all over the world, and traveled all over the world, from Alaska to New Zealand, and the only continent I never visited is the South America. Well, it's all right. Probably I'll go there one day. Well, I'm sorry. I'll be all right. I'll speak on translation, on interpreting, and so on and so forth. I never wanted to be a teacher of English, or I just wanted to learn English, and I wanted to be a literary critic. I wanted to do literature, because I thought, what is good about language? Just rules and exceptions and prepositions and so on. Well, literature is the highest point of the use of any language, you see? The best authors who know how to bring words together, to express their own ideas, to impose their ideas on the readers, and so on. So I entered Moscow State University to do and joined the literature department, English literature department. But in those days we didn't do what we wanted. But so, unfortunately, over the 5 years of my being a student at the philological faculty at Moscow State University, at the English department, English literature department, we never did the literature I wanted to do. The first 2 years I was doing Australian literature all of a sudden, and then the other 2 years, we were doing modern English literature, but it was behind the Iron Curtain. Do you know the Iron Curtain? This horrible time when we were completely isolated from the rest of the world. Well, it wasn't horrible, because we didn't know anything about life behind the Iron Curtain. So we were quite happy. I was happy, and my friends. We just lived. When you live in a country where you are born into a language, you just obey the language and obey the country, and you are a product of the language and a product of the country. And that's how we were. And now, when I graduated, there was no, I couldn't do literature. But I was offered a place of a teacher of English at the language department. And that's how I had to become a linguist, you see. And now I'm so happy that I was so lucky, because I thought I wanted to study Shakespeare. But Shakespeare has been studied for 400 years? For many years, all right? 1616, I think he was born. 400 or more, doesn't matter. Arithmetic is not my strong point. Now I'm happy that I was so lucky and I was forced to do linguistics, to do language. Because language is so much wider, so much more versatile, so different. And we don't appreciate it properly, especially our mother tongue, because we get it without any effort, you know? Just like that. It's a riddle, it's a mystery that we all master our mother tongue within the first 3 years. When we are 3 years old, we speak our mother tongue very well. Nobody taught us, we never had lessons. So that's a mystery that linguists and psychologists are trying to do something about it, to understand how it happens. And after that, we are learning one foreign language, say, for the rest of our lives. But we never reach the same level. The mystery how a child masters its own mother tongue is still not solved. You know? If somebody ever opens this secret, then probably we'll know, we'll be multilingual. But that's a very strange thing. Have you ever thought about it? No? Well, it was a discovery for me too. I'm older. I had more years to think about it. And I wondered, why? And bilingual children, if some people are lucky and their parents speak different languages, then they immediately, without any effort, without teachers, without learning rules, they master language. And you know what? To me now, Russian, which is my mother tongue, and English, that I've been learning it and teaching, I told you, 60 years of teaching and 65 years of learning. Because we began in the 5th form at school in those days. Well, so now I meant to talk about translation and interpreting, but actually what I'm thankful for now, to my teachers, to my life, is that now I'm interested in words, and they open a new world every day to me, even Russian words. You know, my life is so interesting because I have discoveries in my own mother tongue, which of course to me is the very best because it's mine. And mysteriously, I mastered it within my first 3 years, like everybody else. Can you hear me? Because you can see that most of you are listening to me, but not all of you. And I don't care, because it's your choice. After all, I'll go back home and I'll be happy, even if one of you will be listening to me and looking at me and following me. That's easy, you see. So, I don't know, it's a bit of a flood of consciousness, you know, it's called поток сознания, a flood of consciousness, but expressed in words. So it's a flood of speech. But I'm sort of excited, you know, because I love the school, and I love all the people who are learning other languages, and those people who love and learn their mother tongues, because that's also an art, you know. Not many people speak their mother tongues, well, sort of properly. But that's a different subject. So we are all heroes. All those who study foreign languages are heroes. At the same time, we know that we will be never able to say, all right, I know English, now I'll do something else. Because if you are doing a living language, Even if in, sorry, well, now I'm very happy that I was forced to do language and not literature, because language is so much wider, so much more versatile. There are so many, tricks about it, riddles, and it's much more interesting. And I thought I wanted to study Shakespeare. That was my dream. And for the fifth form in school, after I read Hamlet, translated by Lazinski, in a very small library of my parents, who were not sort of humanitarian. I always thought that, well, I want to study Shakespeare. And now I think, Shakespeare lived 400 years ago and wrote. And for 400 years, he's been studied by the whole world. It would be very difficult to find something new. And now, at my disposal, is the whole English language, which is changing, which is number one, by the way, now, global language. And even my first year students at my faculty. No, now I actually work for both, but that's mine. I sort of founded it, and I've done quite a number of interesting things, but only when the choice was either to die or to think of something new. And I never died, or commit suicide, rather. After either to commit suicide, because the situation was desperate. But as you can see, I never committed any suicide. I'm happy, I'm working at my age, and enjoying first year students. I love first year students more than any other year because they are so full of enthusiasm and immediately write me nice letters after they listen to my lectures. Well, now, what else? So we are all heroes. All those who do foreign languages are heroes because we are doing something which can't be done. We can never stop and say, all right, I've done it. Because if the language is living, it will change connotations of words, or just the meaning of words, or just anything, the use of language, and so on and so forth. So we are all heroes. You have chosen a very good, well, not profession, because the knowledge of any foreign language is, of course, a very good thing for anybody, for any profession. And sometimes I'm asked, why, is it good or bad that the English language has become global, and why it's got this honor? Well, it's very simple. It wasn't a bribe or something, there were no bribing. It was just the movement of history. That is, the English language, behind the English language, before it got its position, number one, there are three empires behind it. Three empires. The first one was what? The British Empire, which began in the 16th century. In the 16th century, people from small islands, what is Great Britain on the globe? In the university, at the Faculty of Geography, there is a huge, in Moscow State University, there is a huge globe. And once I brought there a visitor from Britain. And he looked at that globe and said, it's not very complimentary for Great Britain, because on a big globe, Great Britain were just three small dots. But the people from these three small dots were brave enough to travel around the globe by ships, by ships that had sails, sales ship, parusny судно. So if it is a sales ship, it means that you depend on the wind. If the wind is blowing, then you move. If it is not blowing, then you stand, you can't move. And you stand in the middle of the ocean, and there is nothing, there, and it's very dangerous. If you stand there like this too long, you just die. That's one thing, that you depend on the wind. If the wind blows in the opposite direction, then you go back. That's better than standing in the still. But on the other hand, you understand, but having just sails and no motors, ships, they depended on, they managed to conquer 1/4 of the land of the globe. 1/4. And 1/4 of the population. The whole continents, like Australia, New Zealand, and others, they were conquered. So the British Empire is a fantastic thing. And it lasted for 400 years. They began in the 16th century and ended at the beginning of the 20th. That's the time when they collapsed. So that was the first empire. And all those continents and islands and places all over the globe, they still speak English, though they're no longer colonies. But India and Australia, well, you understand. So that was the first empire. The second empire was what? It was the second empire. But at the moment I don't remember which was the second. But I remember very well the third one. Because the second one, of course, America, the United States, one of the colonies, became the ruling sort of country, you know. The former colony of the British Empire, the United States of America, they also speak English. So you understand what happens. So the second empire is America, and it is still ruling. I don't want to talk politics, but I have my own ideas about the special operation now in this country. And, you know, I read some interesting things at the moment and hear them. And of course it's a war in the Ukraine, but the USA, the Second Empire is behind it, definitely. Well, we're not talking politics, no. I haven't said anything that you might, don't quote me in the future. And the third empire, the most powerful, is what? You are the products of it. What? Russian what? No, the next empire is of course the internet. What are you talking about? It's not a country. And it is the most powerful empire. It's everywhere, you know? The internet. I'm glad that I've lived long enough to enjoy it. I have contact my friends from the United States, from English-speaking countries, from non-English-speaking countries. We are united by this. And that's, of course, the most powerful empire. And I'm glad that I've lived long enough to witness it and to use it. Because my life is different, you know. And interestingly, on the day when the special operation began, interestingly, all my friends from America, from the United States, and from Great Britain, they all wrote me very nice words. That don't worry, be happy, we are with you. I was very moved and impressed, because as a product of the Soviet Union, I thought I would never have written them if they were in the same situation, because I would think, well, my country and my government is against it, so why should I bother? But they did write it to me. They did write it to me. I have it on my telephone, can show anybody. The same day, not just that very day. Now, of course, we still go on, but you understand. So the whole point of my talk today is that we are lucky, and I'm happy. You are lucky, and you will be happy, because if you know one foreign language, more or less decently, so that you understand and you can express yourself, then life is different. It's much more interesting, much, too many facets, you know, you can see so much through a different look, you see, because every language is a gift from God, every language. Why? Because when you learn a language, you learn and you look upon the same word. You know, I lectured all over the world and lectured in Russia very intensely and very much and very long, and still do actually. Because now with the internet you can lecture all over the world, which we are doing actually. And what I mean to say is that now I'm so happy that in the Soviet Union the situation was very, and the discipline were very strong, and I was not allowed sort of to do literature. I had to do language, and now I'm very happy because language is much more interesting than just one literature, especially Shakespeare, who's been studied for 400 years, and there is hardly anything that was not already studied for these 400 years. While modern language, a living language, it's growing, it's developing, and it gives you a new look. A new look on the world. You look at the same things, and this is also, it's good and it's bad when you are learning a language. Because, for instance, you think, a house is dom, a table is stol, but it's only in Russian, yes, stol, dom, is just that, but in English, a house is not just like dom in Russian, because a house, what is a house? A dwelling, a place where people live, all right? But what's the difference, say, between a house and a cottage? In English. Please.
The cottage only has one floor, but the house...
Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. But you are the only one who raised your hand. Thank you. Indeed, a house is not dome, because dome is dome. You know what it is. But a house, if there is only one story, one-storied house, dome, is called what? A cottage. While cottage in Russian is not a humble one-storied house where usually an old woman lives, because women live longer than men, physically. It's not our achievement, you know, but just so happens. You understand? So when I realized that's what the meaning of a word is, just a kind of either thread that connects these two things, or rather a road leading from one world to a different world. So a foreign language word is leading you to the foreign language world. And this thing there has a different life. And cottage in Russian is, you know what, only very rich people can afford cottage in Russian. A cottage in English is a very humble, small, one-storied building where usually one old woman lives, because women live longer than men. So mostly cottages are associated with old women who just happen to have at the end of their life this tiny little place where they can live. So you see, and I was so, when I realized that this sort of relation between the thought or our imagination and the language, then I suddenly became so brave that talking to large audiences, I used to say, well, just ask me any word, and I will tell you that in English it means something else. It doesn't coincide. Or it may coincide, but only partly, you see? But there will be a difference, which is important. And everything went very well. And I always answered all the questions. But once at a very big place, a very big house means also the audience, somebody screamed or shouted something like, Leta. And I was suddenly frightened or horrified. I thought, Leta. Leta is everywhere, Leta. It's a term. It's a season. So later, summer, all right. What's the difference? But fortunately, there was a student. Then I was working at the philological faculty, and she was a student of this faculty, and she was my student, and she belonged to a very good family of well-known painters, classical, even so, of the Soviet Union. I will not give you a name. She's alive and working now at my faculty, at my department. And she traveled when we were not traveling yet, because her grandfather, grandfather, they were very famous people, were painting very good paintings and so on, they were painters. And so she told me that because she was one of the first of us who went abroad for the holidays. And she was it was June, she was in Holland, and she was in a kind of international society or international camp or something. And she told me the story when she returned, that they were all together. It was the end of June, like 23rd or 24th, and it was a very international company. They were European children, or teenagers rather, she was, it was cold. It was at home, it was cold, and so she sort of shuddered and said, "Oh, look, summer, it's summer already, and it's so cold." And everybody looked at her and said, "What do you mean? Summer hasn't started yet. It's not summer." Yes, I'm glad that you are surprised. I was also astonished, you know, because I never knew. Though I already read all the books and they wrote all the papers of my own, and so on and so on, and so on and so forth. But in European languages, the seasons begin on the sun, you know, солнцестояние и равноденствие. Well, so summer begins on the 22nd or 23rd of June. Not on the 1st of June. It has nothing to do with the month. It depends with the sun, on the sun, where the sun is standing. So winter and summer begin when the sun is either high up or down. And равноденствие, I knew the word, but at the moment I don't remember. Equisomething. Equinox, yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. Then that's for autumn and spring. And to me it was a discovery. And I was glad, because I thought, well, how interesting. Different languages show different pictures. A new vision of the world. Aren't I lucky that I never did Shakespeare? Because for the 400 years he's been studied by so many people. Every little word, not even line, of his works. But this is actually not true, though, what I'm saying now. Because every new generation sees a classical piece of literature in a new way, through new ideas, through the new ideas of his or her age, you see. So I'm playing with it. But at the moment I'm happy, actually. I'm glad that I have the English language. Of course I did French as a second language and did something else. But still, what my conclusion or my life for the moment, because I'm still alive and working, but for the moment I think that a natural human language is the most important achievement of the mankind. That's what made us, or which gave us this very special position, that we are above all other creatures, only because it is humans who invented this fantastic system of communication. All living beings have their systems of communication. And we know that, say, butterflies, I read it, butterflies, also, they have signs, and the signs even reach them within like 200 kilometers. And if suddenly the whole lot of butterflies suddenly flies somewhere else, it means that they got some sort of sign that this is dangerous now here. And it happens, indeed, something bad happens. So they all have some sort of communication, but such a developed system of communication, that's the only thing that placed humans at the head of the whole living world. Because all creatures have their systems, but it's us, it's humans, who developed it to such an extent. So we owe to our language, to our mother tongue, to any foreign language. Every foreign language opens up your eyes. You see the world differently. It's very interesting when you realize it. And so now I think I'm so lucky that I was not allowed to do Shakespeare. It was just, and I thought it was a tragedy. Now I understand that this is a gift. Because now the English language is at my disposal, it is changing, I'm learning it, I have many friends and colleagues who share here and there and everywhere, who are sharing my views or their views with me, and so on and so forth. I meant to talk about translation, but I digressed. Huh?
Your poem.
All right. Well, I actually sort of write poetry, but only when I'm very unhappy. When the choice is either to commit a suicide or to write a poem. I never committed a suicide, as you can see. When I felt very desperate, suddenly, just a few rhymes and somehow here I am, and so on and so forth. I even wrote poetry in English, by the way. And my even English poems were published in some local magazine, but even so. But I haven't brought this. But as I meant to speak about the translation, I wrote a poem on translation because there was a competition. Well, just the whole world, not world, country, our country, this country, competition, the poem on translation, on the subject of translation. And that's, I never wanted to do linguistics, as I said. Then I thought, all right, I'll do stylistics. That is, styles of different authors, because I wanted to do literature. But our system was very strict. My supervisor was extremely strict, and we had to do what she wanted us to do, and now I'm grateful to her. She pushed me and pushed me and pushed me into linguistics, and actually the only field of linguistics I never did is phonetics. I said there is too much physics there, because it's a sound, and physics is not mine. So I never did phonetics. Everything else, syntax, yes, all right, anything. I mean, lexicology, words, syntax, and all the rest. I've done it, and I'm happy now, because if I did just Shakespeare and nobody else, that would be, I mean, much more narrow, putting it mildly. But when I was doing translation and interpreting, and I realized how bad translations. I'm thinking of a verb, an expressive verb, how they distort the originals. Because you can't translate poetry properly, because you depend on the rhymes and you depend on the size. You see, Razmir. And it's very difficult to squeeze the same ideas in the same beautiful way into these forms, so many syllables, so many stresses, and so on and so forth. So I realized that actually translators, they spoil the source, the actual the actual work of literature, you know. There are, of course, exceptions from the rule, but it's very, very rare. And so I wrote a poem in Russian, because there was a competition. I read somewhere that there is a competition, and actually, without false modesty, I can tell you that I won there, and have a kind of, and it was anonymous. We were not allowed to write our own names. So I will read it to you, though it is in Russian, because the idea was, as I said, I wrote without any competitions. I wrote some poetry, but only just for fun. Next time I'll come to you, I'll bring my English poems that I wrote there. It's called in Russian, if you excuse me, excuse my Russian, it's called «Разговор автора с переводчиком». And I have an epigraph, and it is in Latin, because at the philological faculty in the first year we were doing Latin, and I was so mesmerized, so happy to do it, that I wanted to join the department, to go to the department of ancient languages, ancient Greek and Latin. But fortunately, I didn't do it and stayed in the English department, but since then I love Latin very much, and my episode is just 3 words from Catullus, who was a Roman poet. Catul in Russian, Catullus. And just 3 words. In Latin it says odi et amo. Odi et amo. I even know this poem by Catullus by heart in Latin. Odi et amo, qualit speciam fortasse requiris nescio, sed fieri senso et expulsum. By the way, the roots are all, I mean, if it were slow, if it were written, you would understand, because the Latin roots are, there are very many of them in all European languages. Odi et amo, odi et amo, when you read it as a poem. Odi means hate, and amo means love. And and it's just ненавижу и люблю. Оди et amo. That's my epigraph. But the first 4 lines say ненавижу и люблю. Qualit speciam. Почему я так делаю? Speciam. Fortasse requiris. Наверное, спросишь. Requiris. Nescio, не знаю. Sed fieri senso. Ну так вот чувствую. Я так скрутила и сокрушилась. Вот ненавижу и люблю, не знаю почему так. Но так получилось, и я сокрушилась. Вот. Это эпиграф. Это к разговору автора с переводчиком. Наконец-то издан... Я автор, значит. Мой роман. Все читают. Я от счастья пьян. Наконец ко мне пришло успех. Солнце славы нежится не грех. Власти, критики, страна, народ все кричат, что нужен перевод. Надо миру показать, что мы молоды, талантливы, умны. А меня одолевает страх. Я у переводчика в руках. Переводчик, ты мне друг и брат? Любишь слово? Пригодится, рад? Мы разделим славу и успех. Покорим мы вместе все и всех. Или это глупый разговор? Ты, как многие, бандит и вор, ты убийца и могильщик мой, и издатель в сговоре с тобой. Я стою у бездны на краю, не пишу, не плачу, не пою, не грущу, не ною, не борюсь, просто жду, надеюсь и молюсь. Переводчик, ненавижу и люблю. Переводчик, не губи меня, молю. Не спеши, не режь, не переври, загляни еще раз в словари. Не кромсай, ведь мы умрем от ран. Мы погибнем, я и мой роман. Переводчик, ненавижу и люблю. Не губи ты нас, пожалуйста, молю. Вот такой стишок я написала. Имею какой-то такой вот, знаете, этот самый, как он называется, имею какой-то даже по этому поводу... Извините, I'm sorry, it's called in English, indignities of old age. Remember the phrase, when you are old, it will be useful. Indignities of old age at the moment. Sorry, too long. Yes, I'm sorry. Because, you know, when I begin to speak on something I know and love, it's interesting. And then I must be stopped, because I know too much. I lived long enough. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being so patient with me. Pardon me for all bits and pieces that could be not perfect, putting it very mildly, but I'll come again and I'll speak on something else because I've done everything but phonetics. Thank you.